Hello everybody, I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at potential tropical storm FAY, which is going to potentially develop over parts of North and South Carolina and move up the East Coast. As it continues to head up the East Coast, it will intensify and potentially become our next tropical storm. We already have Tropical Storm Edouard, which did develop already. I believe it developed early this morning, or I believe that in the morning update from the National Hurricane Center, they did put it out as Tropical Storm Edouard. So now this is the fastest time by 6 days. We beat the record that we've ever gone to the E storm, and we could potentially break the record for the fastest F storm that we've ever gotten. So the previous record was back in 2005 with the E storm, which if most of you guys know, 2005 was a very, very active season. So we're already beating that. That was actually the most active season on record, and we're already ahead of that. So that's some concerning news there in terms of that we could potentially see a very hyperactive season if this Invest 98L does develop, which is the one off the over parts of Florida that will transition off the coast of South and North Carolina. If that does develop into some sort of storm, that will be Tropical Storm FAY and potentially our fastest that we've ever gotten to the F named storm. So let's get right into it here with your current National Weather Service page. We have heat advisories in effect for parts of upstate New York and then also for parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. We have heat advisories also for parts of southern Texas there. And then we have some red flag warnings scattered across parts of the Rockies and parts of the Southwest. And then we have some flood watches in effect for parts of Mississippi, a little bit of Alabama, and a lot of southeastern Louisiana. And I believe that is actually associated with that Invest 90 AL, I believe. So that is already bringing pretty heavy downpours to parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. So here is your current National Hurricane Center page and what they're showing for the potential tropical storms and tropical cyclones that are out in the Atlantic. They have currently about a 40, I believe it's actually a 10% chance within the next 48 hours and a 40% chance within the next 5 days, and that's that orange area there. That is potentially what could be Tropical Storm FAY. We also have that 10% region, that yellow region right here. This is a 10% chance over the next 48 hours, a 10% chance also for the next 5 days of development. And then we have Tropical Storm Edouard right here, which we'll get to talking about in just one moment. So here is currently your Eastern Pacific, and we have three areas here. So, for the yellow region furthest to the left on your screen, we have a 10% chance in the next 48 hours and a 20% chance within the next 5 days. And then we have a 10% chance both within the next 48 hours and the next 5 days for the yellow region just to the east of that other yellow region there. And then we have in this dark red region, this is where we have potentially our next tropical storm or even hurricane in the Eastern Pacific. We'll talk about that as well in today's video. We have a 60% chance of development within the next 48 hours and a 90% chance within the next 5 days. So a very, very high chance of development there. And then as we go over to the Central Pacific, just southeast of Hawaii, we have a 20% chance of development within the next 20 days, we have 20% chance of development within the next 48 hours, excuse me there. So we do have some decent shots of seeing some development over parts of the Central Pacific, especially the Eastern Pacific, and we already have quite active Atlantic currently ongoing. So here is currently where Tropical Storm Edouard is currently, and it's at about 52 degrees west and 40 degrees north. It already passed Bermuda by quite a bit already, so it's a couple hundred miles north and east of Bermuda by this point. Now, here is the current track of Tropical Storm Edouard here. It is expected to stay as a tropical storm, and then sometime between 2 p.m. Tuesday and 2 a.m. Wednesday, we are looking at potentially downgrading into a tropical depression, and then the models are picking up potentially that it does re-strengthen potentially as it starts to hit closer to parts of the UK and parts of Britain there as it does head further and further east. And I'll show you that model intensity guidance within just a little bit within the next coming minutes. So here's the past wind speed history, and we do have some history of tropical storm speeds there in that orange region right there. Here's your chance of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and we do have about a 50 to about 60% chance just east of where the center currently is. Here is your current model track guidance, and you see most of the models have it hitting parts of the UK and then hitting parts of Northern Europe there. Now here is the GEFS storm tracks, and this is your GFS ensemble models, the American ensemble models, and most of them again hitting parts of northern Great Britain. And then as we look to your GEPS storm tracks, they don't go far enough out. This is your Canadian ensemble models, and they don't go far enough out, but they will, if they were to go further out, they would most likely also hit parts of Northern Europe and Great Britain. Now, here is your European ensemble model, or your main European ensemble model guidance, and most of them again hitting parts of Northern Great Britain there. So we have fairly good consensus on where this storm is actually going to go. Now, here's your intensity guidance, and this is the one from Tropical Tidbits, and this only goes out about 108 hours or so. And some of these models actually do go further out, and I'm going to actually show you that in just 1 second. Now, you do see that the models it originally is about 40 miles per hour. Most of them keep it between about 35 and about 45 miles per hour. It dips down potentially to a tropical depression, and then it starts to re-strengthen. And you could imagine if these models were to go farther out, they would actually go further and further out, and they would go maybe even touching that category 1 status right there in that yellow shade. Now here is another graph here, and this is showing you a bit longer out, and this is showing you also the SHF5 model. Now this isn't usually the most consistent model. It's also not the best model, but it is showing that this is one of the solutions if this were to go further out, and this is probably the most aggressive solution. But this is showing you the high end of what could happen. Now at most, I think this is going to be a category 1, and even that is unlikely at this point. But some of these models, it does go to show you that if a little if there are some little tiny changes, this could potentially turn into some sort of category 2 or category 3 storm here. Now that is unlikely, but definitely something that's possible, and you can kind of match that trajectory. And I would say probably 2 or 3 more models, if they were to go further out, would bring this to potentially high-end tropical storm or low-end category 1 status. Now here is your current Invest 98L, and this is potentially tropical storm FAY here, currently over parts of the northern panhandle of Florida here. Now here's the current model in track guidance, and we're seeing it move through parts of northern Georgia and northern South Carolina, move through southern North Carolina, enter the Atlantic Ocean, and then kind of curve straight north and east from there, just east of about Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, parts of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then it clips parts of southeastern Connecticut or southeastern Massachusetts, and then it heads north and east into parts of southeast Canada and into parts of northeastern Maine there. So that is kind of your general track for this. Now here is your GEFS ensemble track, and you're saying most of them have pretty much the same track, except the GEFS is a bit further to the west, and this would be a little bit more problematic in terms of more rainfall and potentially stronger wind speeds for areas closer to the coast. Now, here is your GEPS tracks, and you see most of them kind of all over the place as it has passed 96 hours. So the GEPS not as consistent. And then here is your European ensemble models, and they also have this further to the west. So I think this will track somewhere just about 100 miles east of the coast or so. So Here's your current satellite imagery of this, and you can kind of start to see how this is starting to kind of look like some sort of tropical cyclone, and you can kind of see some sort of rotation occurring here, and kind of like this. This is kind of your rotation here, and it is fairly well defined. Yesterday it wasn't as well defined, and it was very, very disorganized, and it's starting to take shape and starting to look a little bit more organized. Now, here is your intensity guidance, and some of these models, about two of them, have this turning into a tropical storm. One of these models, I'm not quite sure what happened with the model. Probably some sort of glitch. Has it at about 10 miles per hour, and then about 12 hours later, it's at a tropical storm status. So that's unlikely. But a couple of these models bring it to a high in tropical depression. Maybe if it strengthens just a little bit more, maybe a low in tropical storm, and that will be your F named storm, and then we would go further down the list as we get more named storms. Now, something also, this is a favorable environment. Look at the East Coast, and just about 1 or 2 months ago, we were in deep cold for parts of the eastern United States, and we had a lot of below average sea surface temperatures, but that's really rebounded, and now we have well above average sea surface temperatures, especially for the northeast coast, where this does look to track to about even 4 degrees above normal Celsius, which is about I would say about 4 to maybe even 10 degrees above average in Fahrenheit here. And in terms of your actual sea surface temperatures, they are quite warm for this time of year for parts of the northeast and mid-Atlantic coast, as well as parts off the coast of the Carolinas there, where off the coast of the Carolinas you have about 26 to about even 29 degrees Celsius, which is right around 85 to even 89 or 90 degrees Fahrenheit there. And if you look off the northeast coast, it's still not as favorable. Usually you want above 26 degrees Celsius, but we are still around 20 to about 24 degrees Celsius. So a bit chilly, but for tropical development, but still could support some sort of weaker tropical entity. Now, here is your current Invest 96E here, and I believe this is the weaker of the two storms. And then we're going to look at the stronger Invest in the Eastern Pacific. Now, this is at about 14 degrees north and about 115 degrees west currently. And here's your current model intensity guidance. None of these models have it as a tropical storm, so not really too much to worry about. Again, if it strengthens a little bit more, maybe another tropical storm in the Eastern Pacific, but looks unlikely right now. Here is currently your Invest 97E, and this is at about 100 or about 99 degrees west and about 10 degrees north. And this is the one that's potentially a little bit more concerning. Still looks like a fish storm or one of those storms that kind of just go over the water and really don't impact land. But we do see this is a little bit more concerning. Now we have two models bring this to a category 1 at least, and one of these models bring it to a weaker category 2. So this would be the strongest storm that we've seen all season for the Central Eastern or the Central Eastern Pacific or the Atlantic currently. So that is something to kind of be concerned about, especially if this veers closer to land. And this would also, all of these models, I believe, are bringing this as a tropical storm, and most of them at least a middle level tropical storm. A lot of these a higher level tropical storm, and even some bring it to a hurricane status. So something definitely very interesting that we do have to look at. Now, we'll start looking at your European ensemble guidance first, and we're going to look at currently your Invest that's over parts of the southeast, and then we're going to look at Tropical Storm Edouard, I believe. Now, or actually, we're going to look at the Eastern Pacific. So here's your tropical depression chances, and we have a fairly good chance, about a 50 to 60% chance over parts of the southeast coast, especially for parts of the Carolinas. And then as you get to the northeast coast, you start to get to about 30 to even 40% chance of that occurring. We're still a ways out from that, and that's about a week away. So these models will increase with confidence as we continue along. Now, here is your chance of tropical storms, and the only chance that you have is over the northeast coast at about a 10 to maybe even a 15% chance. It is fairly cold waters still, even though it's above average over the northeast coast, so that is something that's going to hinder development definitely, but it is in a lower shear environment, so that could definitely help this system out. Here's the Eastern Pacific here, and we do have about 90 to 95% chance of development of both of these systems in terms of becoming a tropical depression. They kind of phase together there as you get to about the 1 week time frame. Now, here is your tropical storm possibilities or probabilities, and you have about a 30 to even a 60% chance of that developing. So that is a decent chance. And I don't have the hurricane probabilities up. I did check them before. I believe they're about 10 to 15% chance of that happening. So it is a decent chance that we do see potentially a first hurricane in the Eastern Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. So that is definitely something very, very interesting. Now, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I'm sorry for the longer video, but we do have a lot to talk about. We had 4 different storms to talk about, 4 different invest or tropical storms. We had 6 different areas of interest, or actually 7 different areas of interest to look at, and we have to talk about potentially 2 tropical storms and potentially another hurricane. So it's definitely a lot, and it's a very action-packed time, and we're definitely off to a very active start to the season. And as we get to August and September, I've been saying this over the past couple of videos, I really do think it's going to be quite hyperactive throughout that period, and it usually is the most hyperactive part of the season. Now, also, something I want to note that I am going to be making my first fall forecast on July 10th and my first winter forecast on July 15th, which July 15th is actually my 1 year anniversary on YouTube. So that is something that I'm very thankful that I was able to do this for a full year, and I hope to continue this, and I'm very grateful for all my subscribers and my supporters. Now, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.